He was a man the world called successful, a self-made millionaire whose name appeared in business magazines and online articles. People admired his luxury house, his expensive cars, and the powerful company he had built from nothing. From the outside, his life looked perfect, but inside his heart, there was a quiet fear that never left him. This man was not afraid of losing money. He had lost money before and earned it again. He was not afraid of competitors, market crashes, or business failures. The only thing that truly scared him was something money could not easily fix: his disabled twin children. Years ago, when his twins were born, his world changed forever. What should have been the happiest day of his life became confusing and painful. Doctors told him that both children had serious disabilities. They would need special care for the rest of their lives. They would never be fully independent, and they would always be vulnerable. In that moment, all his wealth felt small. He loved his twins deeply. From the day they came home, he promised himself that nothing bad would ever happen to them. He used his money to create the safest environment possible. The house was large, clean, and full of modern technology. There were nurses, caregivers, security guards, and assistants working in shifts. Everything was organized and professional. Still, the fear never went away. Every morning before leaving for work, he would stand quietly at their bedroom door, watching them sleep. Their breathing was slow and gentle. Their faces were peaceful and innocent. He always wondered what kind of world they would face when he was not around. That thought followed him everywhere, even into his office meetings. Because of his busy schedule, he could not be with them all day. Important calls, business trips, and responsibilities kept him away. He told himself that he was working hard for their future, that the money would protect them, but deep down he felt guilty. Sometimes when he returned home late at night, he noticed small things that made him uncomfortable. The twins seemed quieter than usual. Sometimes they avoided eye contact. Sometimes they clung to him more tightly than before. He asked the caregivers if everything was fine, and they always smiled and said yes. "There is nothing to worry about, sir," they said. He wanted to believe them, and most of the time he did. After all, he had hired the best professionals money could find, people with experience, certificates, and good references. Why would anyone harm his children, especially in such a protected home? But father's heart feels things logic cannot explain. Late at night, when the house was silent, he often sat alone in his study. Thinking, he stared at family photos on his desk, photos of the twins smiling during rare joyful moments. Those smiles reminded him of how fragile their happiness was. He knew the world could be cruel. He had seen greed, lies, and betrayal in business. He had learned that people could hide their true nature very well. That same thought began to enter his personal life. What if someone inside his home was not as kind as they appeared? This fear was not loud. It was silent and slow, growing little by little. It did not come from one big incident, but from many small feelings he could not ignore. One evening, after a long day, he sat with the twins in the living room. He watched them struggle with simple actions that most people take for granted. His heart tightened. He realized again how dependent they were on others, how easily someone could take advantage of them. That night, he barely slept. He kept thinking about what would happen if something went wrong, and he never knew. What if signs were missed? What if trust was broken quietly? What if his children were suffering silently, unable to explain? For the first time, he accepted a painful truth. Wealth could build walls, hire people, and buy technology, but it could not replace constant presence. He could not watch every moment himself. No matter how much money he had, he was still only one man. This realization filled him with fear and determination at the same time. He knew he had to do something more, something smarter, something that would allow him to see the truth without relying only on words and promises. He did not want to accuse anyone unfairly. He did not want to create tension or fear in his home. He only wanted peace of mind. He wanted to be sure his children were truly safe when he was not there. As he sat alone in the dark, the idea slowly formed in his mind. He would watch quietly, without interfering, without suspicion, just observe, just protect. At that moment, he did not know that this decision would change his life forever. He believed he was simply being a careful father, a loving parent doing what was necessary. But deep inside, his heart felt heavy, because fear had already entered his perfect world. And once fear enters, the truth is never far behind. The twins were the quiet center of the house. Even with all its size, luxury, and movement, everything seemed to slow down around them. They were still young, but life had already given them challenges most adults would struggle to face. Their bodies did not always respond the way they wanted, and their words came slowly, often trapped between thoughts and effort. They shared a deep connection that no one else fully understood. When one smiled, the other noticed. When one felt pain or fear, the other became restless. Even without speaking much, they communicated in small looks, soft sounds, and gentle touches. It was as if they lived in a world only the two of them could fully enter. Their father watched this bond with mixed emotions. It filled him with love, but also reminded him how fragile they were. Simple daily tasks required help, getting dressed, eating, moving from one room to another. All these things needed patience and care. The caregivers followed a strict routine. Mornings began early. Gentle voices woke the twins. Breakfast was prepared carefully. Medications were given on time. Physical therapy sessions followed. And then quiet hours for rest. On paper, everything looked perfect. The schedule was clear, the staff was trained, and the reports were always positive. But real life does not always show itself on paper. Some days the twins were cheerful, responding well to therapy and smiling at familiar faces. Other days they seemed withdrawn, staring at walls, or holding each other tightly. The caregivers explained this as part of their condition: mood changes, sensitivity, emotional overload. All reasonable explanations, all logical. Still, the father noticed patterns others ignored. When he came home earlier than expected, the twins sometimes reacted with surprise, almost relief. They reached for him with more urgency than before. Their grip was tighter, their expressions more serious. He told himself he was imagining things, that his own fear was shaping his thoughts. He wanted to believe that the house was a safe place, a controlled environment built with love and resources. But the truth was that the twins could not clearly explain their feelings. They could not easily say if something was wrong. Their silence made them innocent, but it also made them vulnerable. The father often remembered how different his life had been before they were born. His days were filled with meetings, travel, and ambition. He measured success in numbers and growth charts. Now, success meant something else: a peaceful day for his children, a calm night without tears. Despite all his care, distance remained a problem. His responsibilities pulled him away for hours, sometimes days. He depended on reports, messages, and short video calls. He saw their faces on screens, but screens could not show everything. One afternoon, during a rare free day, he sat with them during therapy. He noticed how sensitive they were to tone and touch. A gentle hand made them relax. A rough movement made them tense immediately. That moment stayed with him. It reminded him how easily their trust could be broken. He began asking more questions, not accusing questions, but careful ones. How was their mood today? Did they eat well? Did they sleep peacefully? The caregivers answered politely, professionally, but quickly, almost too quickly. The twins themselves reacted differently to different staff members. With some, they were calm. With others, they became stiff and quiet. This difference was subtle, easy to miss, but a father's eyes do not miss what the heart already fears. At night, the father replayed these moments in his mind. He told himself that professionals know what they are doing, that experience matters more than emotion. Yet emotion refused to stay silent. He remembered something a doctor once told him: children with disabilities feel more than they can express. They absorb energy, tone, intention. Even silence speaks to them. That sentence returned to him again and again. The house, despite its beauty, felt too quiet sometimes, too controlled, too clean. Life should have more warmth, more noise, more laughter. He wondered if rules and routines had slowly replaced genuine care. The twins deserved more than efficiency. They deserved kindness without impatience, attention without distraction, safety without fear. One evening, as the sun set through the large windows, the twins sat on the floor, playing with simple toys. The father watched them carefully. Their movements were slow, but focused. Their world was small, but meaningful. That was when a painful thought struck him. Anyone who entered that small world held great power. Power to heal, power to harm. He realized then that his children trusted blindly. They trusted hands that fed them, voices that guided them, faces that appeared every day. That trust was pure, and purity needs protection. From that day on, his worry became sharper, more focused. He was no longer afraid of imagined danger. He was afraid of unseen reality. He did not share these thoughts with anyone, not with staff, not with friends, not even with family. He knew how easily concern could be dismissed as overthinking, but he also knew that ignoring instincts had consequences. Every small reaction from the twins became a signal. Every silence felt louder than words. The house continued to function smoothly, yet something beneath the surface felt unsettled. This was not fear born from weakness. It was fear born from love, deep, protective, and impossible to silence. Without realizing it fully, the father had reached a turning point. He was no longer willing to rely only on trust and routine. He needed clarity. And clarity, he believed, would finally give his heart the answers it desperately needed. The thought did not come suddenly. It grew slowly in the father's mind, shaped by sleepless nights and quiet observations. He was not a suspicious man by nature. In business, he trusted systems and numbers. In his home, he wanted to trust people, but something inside him kept whispering that trust alone was not enough. He began to notice how easily truth could be hidden behind polite smiles and professional words. Caregivers came and went, shifts changed, reports were written, and everything looked normal on the surface. Yet his heart remained uneasy. One morning, while sitting alone with a cup of untouched coffee, he asked himself a hard question. What if something was happening when no one important was watching? What if the truth lived only in the moments between reports? That question stayed with him all day. He did not want to confront anyone. Accusations without proof could destroy trust and create fear in the house. He also did not want to disturb the twins' routine. They needed stability more than anything. Loud changes and tension could hurt them emotionally. So he searched for a silent solution, something that could observe without speaking, something that could see without judging. Technology had helped him build his empire. Now he wondered if it could protect his children. The idea of cameras entered his mind, not as a tool of control, but as a quiet witness. He told himself it was only for safety, just to make sure nothing went wrong, just to reassure himself. Still, he hesitated. Installing cameras inside his own home felt like crossing a line. This was not a factory or an office. This was where his children lived, where trust should exist naturally. He feared becoming the kind of man who watched instead of believed. But then he remembered the twins' silent eyes, their sudden stillness around certain people, their tight grip on his hands when he returned home. Those memories pushed him forward. One evening, after everyone had gone to sleep, he opened his laptop and began researching quietly. He did not call his security team. He did not involve his assistants. He wanted this to remain private. He chose small cameras, almost invisible, with no blinking lights, no sound, no obvious signs. They were designed for homes, for safety, for parents watching over children. The descriptions promised peace of mind. Peace of mind was exactly what he was searching for. He planned carefully. The cameras would only be placed in common areas, the playroom, the living room, the hallway outside the twins' bedroom. He avoided private spaces. He told himself again and again that this was not spying, this was protection. The installation happened quietly over one weekend, when most of the staff were off. He worked alongside a trusted technician, pretending they were upgrading the home security system. No one asked questions. No one suspected anything unusual. When the cameras were finally active, he felt a strange mix of relief and guilt. Relief that he would finally see what happened in his absence. Guilt that he needed to see it all. The first few days were boring, almost disappointing. He watched short clips during breaks at work. Children playing softly, caregivers moving around, therapy sessions following routine steps. Everything looked normal, kind even. For a moment, he felt ashamed. Ashamed of doubting people who seemed to care. Ashamed of letting fear guide him. He almost decided to turn the system off. But something stopped him. It was not a single event. It was a feeling, a quiet reminder that truth takes time to reveal itself. So he kept watching, not obsessively, not every hour, just enough to stay aware. As days passed, small details began to appear. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just moments that felt slightly wrong. A sigh that carried impatience. A pause before responding to the twins. A tone that changed when no one else was around. He noticed how behavior shifted depending on who was present. When supervisors visited, everything was warm and careful. When they left, the energy sometimes changed. These moments were easy to explain away. Anyone could have a bad day. Anyone could feel tired. He reminded himself of that often. Still, he saved the clips. Late at night, when the house was quiet and the twins were asleep, he reviewed the footage more closely, watching without sound first. Then with sound, he observed body language, facial expressions, distance. He realized how much people revealed when they thought no one was watching. At the same time, he saw moments of kindness that touched him deeply. Caregivers who spoke gently, who waited patiently, who treated the twins with real warmth. These moments eased his heart. They reminded him that good people still existed. Yet the contrast made the troubling moments stand out even more. He found himself sitting longer in front of the screen, pausing, rewinding, studying expressions he had never noticed before. It was exhausting, emotionally draining. Some nights, he closed the laptop and stared into darkness, wondering if he was doing the right thing, wondering if the search for truth would hurt more than ignorance. But each morning, when he kissed his children goodbye, the decision felt right again. He was not looking for punishment. He was looking for certainty. As the weeks passed, the footage began to tell a story. Not a loud one, not a clear one, but a story built from patterns, repeated behaviors, subtle shifts. The father felt the weight of responsibility grow heavier. Knowledge was approaching, and with it, consequences. He did not yet know what he would find. He did not know who would disappoint him or who would surprise him. All he knew was that once you choose to see, you cannot unsee. And deep in his heart, he sensed that the cameras were not just recording daily life anymore. They were slowly uncovering a truth he was not fully prepared to face. At first, everything looked ordinary, almost boring. The cameras showed the same routine every day. Morning light entering the living room, caregivers arriving on time, the twins being guided gently from one activity to another, nothing dramatic, nothing alarming. The father told himself this was good news. This meant his fear was unnecessary. This meant his children were safe. For a few days, he barely checked the footage. He felt lighter, more relaxed. Even at work, his mind stayed focused. The quiet worry that once followed him everywhere began to fade. But calm can sometimes hide deeper truth. One evening, while scrolling through recordings casually, he noticed something small, so small that most people would ignore it. A caregiver spoke to the twins without smiling. Her tone was flat, not cruel, not kind, just empty. He paused the video, then played it again. Nothing seemed wrong. The twins were fed, cleaned, and guided properly, but something about the moment stayed with him. It lacked warmth. He reminded himself that not everyone shows emotion the same way, that professionalism does not always mean affection. He closed the video and went to sleep. The next day, another moment appeared, a different caregiver this time. During playtime, one of the twins dropped a toy. The caregiver sighed loudly before picking it up. The sigh was brief, almost unnoticeable. Almost. The father felt his chest tighten, not because of what happened, but because of what it meant. These small reactions were invisible in reports, impossible to explain in words. Days passed, and similar moments began to connect like pieces of a puzzle. A raised eyebrow, a longer pause, a touch that was efficient but not gentle. Still, nothing was clearly wrong, no shouting, no harm, no obvious neglect, just small cracks in the picture of perfect care. He started watching more carefully, slowing the footage, muting the sound, focusing on body language. He noticed how behavior changed depending on who else was in the room. When other staff members were present, everything looked softer, kinder. When the caregiver was alone with the twins, movements became faster, voices lower, patience thinner. These were not crimes. They were moments of human weakness, but for children who depended completely on others, weakness could slowly become damage. The father struggled with doubt. He asked himself again and again if he was overthinking, if fear was making normal behavior look dangerous. He wanted proof, something clear, something undeniable. One afternoon, he returned home earlier than usual without informing anyone. He walked quietly through the house. The twins were in the playroom with a caregiver. The scene looked peaceful. But when the caregiver noticed him, her behavior changed instantly. Her voice became sweet, her posture relaxed. The twins looked confused, as if the world had suddenly shifted. That moment stayed in his mind. That night, he reviewed the footage from the same time earlier in the day. Before he arrived, the difference was clear now. Not shocking, but undeniable. The caregiver had not harmed the twins, but she had ignored them emotionally, sitting on her phone, responding slowly, touching them only when necessary. The father felt a wave of guilt. He had trusted systems more than presence. He had believed that as long as rules were followed, love would exist automatically. The footage continued to reveal these contrasts. Some caregivers treated the twins like fragile treasures. Others treated them like tasks to complete. The most painful part was realizing that the twins reacted differently to each type of care. With warmth, they relaxed. With coldness, they became quieter, smaller. He saw one twin reaching out for attention, only to be gently moved aside, not pushed, not shouted at, just delayed. That delay broke something inside him. He understood now that harm does not always come loudly. Sometimes it arrives softly, wearing patience on the outside and indifference on the inside. Sleep became difficult again. His mind replayed clips over and over. He began asking himself harder questions. Was this enough to act? Was he being unfair? He imagined confronting the staff without clear evidence. He imagined the damage it could cause, but then he imagined doing nothing. Doing nothing felt worse. The cameras had not shown a single shocking moment yet, but they had shown a pattern, and patterns tell the truth people try to hide. The father realized something important. Safety is not only about preventing physical harm. It is also about emotional presence, respect, and patience. His children needed more than routine. They needed hearts that cared. One late night, as he sat alone watching the screen glow in the dark room, he whispered to himself that installing the cameras had not been a mistake. Ignoring what they showed would be. He knew now that the truth was not going to appear suddenly. It was unfolding slowly, like a story revealing itself line by line. And deep down, he felt that the most difficult part was still ahead, because once you see the reality behind polite smiles, you can never pretend again. The house was quiet. The twins were asleep. The cameras continued to record. And the father understood that what looked normal on the surface was hiding something that demanded action, even if that action would change everything. The night the truth finally revealed itself did not begin with drama or warning. It began like every other quiet night in the house. The twins were asleep, the lights were dim, and the father sat alone in his study with the soft glow of the screen in front of him. He almost did not check the footage that night. His mind was tired, his heart already heavy from weeks of watching small, uncomfortable moments. But something inside him pushed him to open the files again. He selected a random time earlier that afternoon. Nothing special about it, just another ordinary day. At first, the screen showed the living room. The twins sat on the floor, their toys spread around them. A caregiver was present, moving slowly, casually. Everything looked normal. Then something changed. One of the twins dropped a toy and made a soft sound, a sound that meant frustration. The caregiver did not react immediately. She stayed where she was, scrolling on her phone. Seconds passed, too many seconds. The twin tried again, reaching out, his small hand stretched toward her, his eyes filled with hope. The caregiver sighed, loudly this time, and stood up, not with anger, but with visible irritation. She picked up the toy and placed it back without making eye contact. Her movements were rougher than before. The father leaned closer to the screen. His heartbeat grew louder in his ears. This was still not the shock. The real shock came moments later. The other twin became restless, reacting to his brother's distress. He began making louder sounds. His body stiffened. He needed comfort. Instead of responding with patience, the caregiver looked around the room, checking if anyone else was nearby. Seeing no one, her face changed. The smile disappeared completely. She spoke softly, but the words were cold, telling the twins to be quiet, telling them they were making trouble. The father froze. The words were not shouted. They were not violent, but they were sharp, full of frustration and resentment. He replayed the clip again and again, hoping he had misunderstood, hoping the sound had distorted the meaning. But each time, the truth became clearer. The caregiver was not abusing the twins physically. She was hurting them emotionally, slowly, quietly, in moments no one else saw. As the video continued, the twins grew silent. Their bodies relaxed not from comfort, but from surrender. They stopped reaching out. They stopped asking. That silence broke the father's heart. He felt his chest tighten. His hands trembled. Guilt rushed through him like a storm. This was happening under his roof, in the house he believed was safest. And this was not a single moment. He opened another file, then another. His eyes burned as hours passed. The same pattern appeared again and again. Different days, same caregiver, same tone, same cold impatience when no one was watching. He realized then that what he was seeing was not a bad day. It was behavior, repeated, consistent, hidden behind professionalism. The twins reacted the same way every time, at first seeking attention, then slowly withdrawing, learning without words that asking for comfort was pointless. The father felt sick. He stood up and walked around the room, trying to breathe, trying to think clearly. His wealth, his planning, his trust in systems had failed the most important people in his life. He remembered every moment he had accepted a report without question, every time he told himself everything was fine. Tears filled his eyes, not from anger alone, but from shame. He returned to the screen, his face hard now, focused, determined. As he continued watching, another shocking detail emerged. When other staff members entered the room, the caregiver's behavior changed instantly. Her voice softened, her patience returned. The twins were treated kindly again. The father realized how carefully the truth had been hidden, how perfectly the mask had been worn. This discovery cut deeper than any betrayal he had experienced in business, because this betrayal had touched his children. The most painful moment came near the end of the footage. One twin leaned against the other, seeking comfort from the only person who never disappointed him, his brother. That simple action shattered the father. His children had learned to rely on each other instead of the adults meant to protect them. He closed the laptop slowly, his reflection staring back at him from the dark screen, a man who thought money could solve everything. That night, he did not sleep. He sat alone, thinking about what to do next. Calling the police felt wrong. There was no crime in the legal sense, no bruises, no broken rules. But in his heart, he knew a line had been crossed. He thought about confronting the caregiver immediately, but he stopped himself. Acting in anger could create chaos. He needed to be smart for his children's sake. As the sun began to rise, his shock transformed into resolve. He would not ignore what he had seen. He would not pretend small harm was acceptable. The cameras had shown him the truth he feared, the truth that safety is not just about rules, it is about compassion. And now that he knew, there was no turning back. The house slowly woke up, unaware that everything had already changed. The twins slept peacefully, still innocent of the choices about to be made for their future. The father watched them quietly from their doorway, his heart heavy, his mind clear. The shock had opened his eyes, and whatever came next, he promised himself one thing: his children would never again suffer in silence. The next day felt heavier than all the days before. The father moved through the house calmly, but inside him, a storm was growing. He spoke less, listened more, and watched carefully. He did not confront anyone immediately. Anger was loud, and he knew loud actions could create fear and confusion for the twins. He needed truth, not drama. At breakfast, the caregiver behaved as usual, polite, professional, smiling. She greeted him with respect, asking if everything was fine. He nodded calmly, hiding the storm behind his eyes. That smile hurt more than the footage. Throughout the day, He stayed home instead of going to work. He told everyone he was taking a personal day. No one questioned him. After all, wealthy men often change plans without explanation. He watched quietly as the routine continued. The twins moved through their day with familiar patterns: therapy, rest, play. The caregiver followed instructions perfectly when he was nearby. Her voice was soft, her patience endless. The contrast was painful. In the afternoon, he called the head nurse in his study. His voice was calm, measured. He asked general questions about staff performance, about stress, about workload. The nurse spoke confidently, praising the team, explaining how demanding the job could be. Then he asked one simple question: how do you handle emotional care when no one is watching? The nurse paused for a moment, then answered carefully, speaking about training and professionalism. Her words sounded right, but they felt distant. That moment confirmed what he already knew: systems could not measure compassion. Later that evening, when the twins were resting, he asked the caregiver to speak with him privately. His tone was gentle, respectful. There was no accusation in his voice. She entered the room confidently, unaware of what was coming. He did not raise his voice. He did not show anger. He simply told her that he had been spending more time at home and observing patterns. He asked how she truly felt about caring for children with special needs. At first, she answered professionally, speaking about responsibility and routine. Then he asked again, softer this time, how do you feel when it gets difficult? Something changed in her expression. Just for a moment, the smile weakened, the confidence slipped. She sighed and spoke honestly. She talked about exhaustion, about pressure, about how demanding the twins could be. She said she never meant harm. She said she followed rules. Then he asked the question that mattered most. Do you believe emotional neglect is harmless? She looked confused, defensive. She said she never hurt the children. She said there were no complaints, no injuries, no rules broken. That was when he turned the screen toward her. He did not shout, he did not accuse, he pressed play. The room filled with silence as the footage played. Her voice, her tone, her sighs, her moments of impatience, all visible, all undeniable. Her face went pale, her body stiffened. He watched her carefully, not with anger, but with clarity. She tried to explain. Her words came quickly now. She said she was tired. She said everyone had bad days. She said she never imagined someone was watching. That sentence revealed everything. She had behaved differently because she believed no one could see. The father spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. He explained that harm does not always leave marks, that children who cannot fully express themselves feel rejection deeply, that silence can wound just as much as force. Tears filled her eyes, not from regret alone, but from fear of consequences. He told her calmly that this home required more than routine. It required empathy, patience, and respect, every single moment. He did not fire her immediately. Instead, he suspended her duties and asked her to leave quietly, without argument, without scene. When she left, the house felt different, lighter, quieter. That night, he gathered the remaining staff, not to threaten, not to accuse, but to speak honestly. He told them that he had realized how vulnerable his children truly were. He explained that emotional safety mattered as much as physical care. He did not mention cameras. He did not need to. His presence spoke louder than any warning. The staff listened carefully. Some nodded with understanding. Some looked uncomfortable, but all understood that something had changed. Later, he sat with the twins in the living room. No screens, no distractions, just him and them. He spoke softly, holding their hands. Even though they could not fully respond with words, they felt the change. They leaned into him, calmer than before, as if they sensed that something heavy had been lifted. That night, as he watched them sleep, guilt returned, but this time it was different. It pushed him toward action, not regret. He realized that protecting his children required more than money and observation. It required courage, courage to face uncomfortable truths, courage to confront people without cruelty, courage to change systems he once trusted blindly. The cameras had shown him behavior, but confrontation revealed character. He also learned something painful about himself. He had been absent, relying on others to provide care that only love could truly give. From that day on, he changed his schedule. He canceled unnecessary trips. He left meetings early. He chose presence over profit. The house slowly transformed, not in appearance, but in feeling. Conversations became warmer, interactions more patient. The twins began to show small changes. They reached out more, made more sounds, held eye contact longer. These changes were subtle but real. The father understood then that truth does not always arrive like an explosion. Sometimes it comes quietly, asking for responsibility. And responsibility, he learned, was the greatest test of love. The breaking point did not come in a single moment of anger. It came slowly, through reflection, exhaustion, and the heavy weight of responsibility. The father felt it in the quiet hours of the night, when the house slept, but his thoughts refused to rest. He sat alone in his study. No cameras playing, no footage to analyze, just memories. He replayed everything in his mind, the early signs he ignored, the trust he gave too easily, the belief that money could replace presence. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel fully. The guilt was overwhelming. It pressed on his chest, making every breath feel heavy. He realized that while he never intended harm, his absence had created space for it. He walked through the house quietly, stopping outside the twins' room, watching them sleep peacefully, unaware of how close they had come to growing up in emotional silence. In that moment, something inside him broke, not weakness but illusion. The illusion that control meant protection. He understood now that no system could replace a parent's attention. No amount of money could buy intuition. No technology could love. That realization hurt more than any betrayal he had experienced. The next morning, he made decisions that shocked everyone around him. He canceled a major overseas deal, postponed meetings, and delegated responsibilities he once held tightly. His assistants were confused, his partners concerned. But he felt calm. For the first time, his priorities were clear. He began restructuring the twins' care completely. Not just replacing staff, but changing the approach. He consulted specialists, psychologists, therapists, not only about medical needs, but emotional development. He demanded one thing above all: compassion. The new caregivers were selected slowly, personally interviewed by him. Not based only on certificates, but on patience, empathy, and attitude. He watched how they spoke, how they listened, how they reacted to stress. The house began to feel different, warmer, more human. He also changed himself. He became part of the routine, feeding the twins, sitting with them during therapy, learning their small signals, understanding their world instead of observing it from a distance. At first, the twins reacted cautiously, as if unsure whether this presence would last. But slowly, they relaxed, their trust grew stronger, their bond with him deepened. One afternoon, during a simple play session, one of the twins laughed, a real laugh, clear and free. The sound echoed through the room. The father froze. Tears filled his eyes. That laugh was proof that healing had begun. He realized then how much emotional neglect had silenced them, how patience and attention could awaken joy again. The breaking point also forced him to confront his past, his childhood, his own experiences with absence and pressure. He understood that his drive for success came from a desire to provide, but provision without presence had limits. This understanding humbled him. He began speaking openly with others, friends, professionals, even employees, about the importance of emotional care. He shared lessons, not from theory, but from pain. The cameras were no longer his focus. He kept them, but they faded into the background. They had served their purpose, revealing truth. Now, his focus was connection. The twins began showing small improvements, more engagement, less withdrawal. Their therapist noticed changes, not dramatic, but meaningful. The father learned to measure success differently, not in profits, but in smiles, not in growth charts, but in moments of peace. Some nights were still hard. Guilt returned. Fear whispered, but it no longer controlled him. He had faced it, owned it, acted on it. The breaking point had become a turning point. He accepted that love requires constant effort, attention, and humility. He accepted that being present was not a sacrifice. It was a privilege. As weeks passed, the house transformed into a place of genuine care. The twins felt it, responded to it, lived within it. The father stood stronger, not because he had power, but because he had learned responsibility. He understood now that protection does not come from watching others. It comes from showing up yourself. And though the journey ahead remained long and challenging, he faced it with clarity and purpose. Because once a man reaches his breaking point and chooses growth instead of denial, he becomes someone entirely new. A father, fully present, fully aware, and finally ready to protect his children in the only way that truly matters, with love, patience, and unwavering attention. Time moved forward quietly, not with sudden miracles, but with steady change. The house that once felt controlled and silent now carried a softer rhythm. Voices were calmer, movements slower, and patience filled the spaces where tension once lived. The father no longer counted days by meetings or profits. He counted them by moments, a peaceful morning, a calm therapy session, a night without fear. He had learned that protection was not about watching from a distance anymore. It was about involvement, about being seen and felt by his children. Every morning, he made it a habit to sit with the twins before the day began. He spoke to them gently. Even when words could not be fully returned, he learned their expressions, the meaning behind their sounds, the way their eyes changed when they felt safe. These small routines built something stronger than any system he had ever created: trust. The twins slowly changed, not in ways that shocked doctors or amazed strangers, but in ways that mattered deeply. They became more expressive, less withdrawn, more present. Their silence no longer felt heavy, it felt peaceful. The caregivers noticed it too. They spoke of better responses during therapy, more cooperation, less tension. These changes were signs of healing, emotional healing that had been waiting for space to grow. The father often thought about the cameras, once symbols of fear. They now felt like reminders of how close he had come to missing the truth. He did not remove them completely, but he stopped checking them obsessively. His heart no longer needed constant proof. One afternoon, while sitting on the floor with the twins, building something simple with blocks, one of them reached out and touched his face. The gesture was gentle and intentional. In that moment, he understood something deeply. His children were not broken. They were sensitive. They felt everything. He felt a quiet wave of gratitude. Gratitude that he had listened to his instincts. Gratitude that the truth had been revealed before more damage was done. Gratitude that healing was possible. He also felt responsibility, not just for his children, but for others like them. He began supporting programs that trained caregivers in emotional awareness, not just skills, but empathy. He shared his story privately with professionals, not to gain attention, but to warn, to remind others that emotional neglect can exist even in perfect environments. The twins continued to grow within their limits, and those limits no longer defined their worth. Their world was small, but it was full. At night, the father often sat beside their beds, watching them sleep. The fear that once kept him awake was gone, replaced by awareness and presence. He no longer believed that wealth could protect love. He believed love required effort, consistency, and humility. Looking back, he understood that the shock he experienced was not just about what he saw on the screen. It was about what he saw in himself. A man who had trusted systems more than instincts, who had confused provision with protection. The experience had changed him forever. He became quieter, more thoughtful, less impressed by appearances. He learned to question comfort, to look beyond reports, to value honesty over ease. The house remained large and beautiful, but its true value now lived in unseen moments. A soft voice, a patient pause, a shared silence. The twins grew up surrounded not just by care, but by care that cared. And the father, once known only as a millionaire, found his true identity not in success, but in responsibility. He had installed cameras to protect his children, but what truly protected them was what the cameras revealed. A truth that changed a family, a lesson that redefined love, and a reminder that the most important things in life are not watched, they are felt.